While Planet of the Apes is first and foremost a science fiction film franchise, it's also pulled from several other genres throughout most of its 10 films we've gotten, including action-adventure, political thriller, romance, fantasy, and even comedy.
Alright, kids. Who wants to buy some aspirin?
For better or worse, one genre that has yet to be really embraced by the franchise, however, is horror, which leads me to the topic of this video: could a Planet of the Apes horror movie work? I'm here to give my thoughts. If you like what I do here and want to show your support, be sure to hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all things apes. Enjoy the video. Happy Halloween, Ape Nation. Welcome back to your #1 source for all things Planet of the Apes on YouTube. My name is Josh, and today I wanted to do something a little bit different. Something most of you probably don't know is that Halloween is my personal favorite holiday, and something that a lot of you also probably don't know is that my favorite genre is actually horror. I'm somebody who has loved and obsessed over the Halloween season and horror films ever since I was a teenager. Funnily enough, that obsession started not long after my obsession with Planet of the Apes did. I just love the aesthetic of the season and all things creepy, scary, and suspenseful, but all of that love for the genre, especially recently, had gotten me thinking, could Planet of the Apes ever work as a horror movie? At first, I thought, nah, why would anybody try that? It would just be silly. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that, in a way, Planet of the Apes, at least conceptually, kind of already is a horror movie, at least from a certain point of view. The movies that I mainly wanted to take a look at are the first 3 entries in the modern Apes franchise: Rise, Dawn, and War for the Planet of the Apes. Though there are definitely some terrifying elements of the original films as well, something I started really thinking about when asking myself whether or not an Apes horror movie could work is the perspective that these movies take: Caesar's. But what if that wasn't the case? What if instead, the Planet of the Apes trilogy wasn't so much focused on the humanity within its ape characters who eventually take over the planet, and instead focused on a completely separate human or group of human characters? What would their experience be? What would they be thinking? How would they feel having to try to survive a virus that's wiping out the population in record numbers, while also afraid of running into a talking ape that, in their mind, caused said virus? And the biggest question of all, how would it change how we view the movies and how they make us feel as viewers? Obviously, we'd have 3 very different movies if that were the case, and Caesar probably wouldn't be known as the iconic hero he is today, though perhaps he could be just as iconic as a villain. Still, it's an interesting idea to ponder. What if that trilogy was handled differently and turned into more of a science fiction horror story? When you look at the original movies, the humans almost always were portrayed as corrupt and inept throughout most of the 5-film run. You have exceptions, of course, like McDonald, Taylor, Armando, whereas in the new films, the humans are given a bit more depth and complexity to a degree, specifically in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. And I think the complexity of the humans, like the ones we see in that movie, like Malcolm, like Dreyfus, and even in War, like the Colonel, or in the first film, you have characters like Will and Charles, who aren't quite as complex, but they're still morally good, enjoyable, likable characters. And I think the complexity and likability and morality of humans like those that we got a lot of throughout the trilogy, had it been tapped into much more and been shifted to the main focus of the story, could have made for just as compelling protagonists as the apes, with the apes instead being made to be the antagonists. The apes are already fairly scary at times with the way they're presented throughout the trilogy, and that's something that could have been relied on much more had they been the villains. It could almost be like a mix of Alien and The Walking Dead, but back when The Walking Dead was still a tense and interesting show that didn't overstay its welcome before becoming a 10-season vessel for a new spin-off every other month. But I digress. The apes would probably not be as compelling as characters as they are now. You wouldn't have characters like Caesar and Koba and Rocket and Maurice, who you love and care about and understand so much, but instead they'd be portrayed as villains. They'd be scary. They'd be these creatures that can use their environment to their advantage. They're creatures that can use their abilities as animals versus humans to their own advantage, similar to something like the Xenomorph in Alien. I think that would be really scary and present a lot of great opportunities. But on the other side of that coin, the stronger human characters that we could get in place of those great ape leads that we got in the trilogy originally, paired with making those apes legitimately scary, I think maybe could have been just as enjoyable. The apes have the ability to survive in pretty much any environment, as we saw throughout the trilogy, and that combined with their intelligence, I think makes them incredibly dangerous and a legitimate threat to humans at any time, and that's present throughout the entire trilogy. Imagine a sequence like the bridge scene in Rise, or Koba's attack on the humans in Dawn, but shifted to be about some random family or a couple or just some really good guy. Seeing these events through their eyes could be terrifying without the context of who Caesar and his apes are, or where they came from and what they want. And in the right filmmaker's hands, perhaps someone like a Mike Flanagan or Fede Alvarez, you could get something that's just as thought-provoking as what the trilogy we got gave us, assuming the characters work and the scripts are compelling, while honing in more on the scares that come with this world. Maybe it's something that even Matt Reeves could have been able to pull off, considering his first two movies before doing Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which were Cloverfield and Let Me In, are both very prominent members of the horror genre family. Let Me In is a very tense, scary vampire film, and Cloverfield, while I don't necessarily consider it a pure horror film, definitely has horror elements, and it is a very tense science fiction found footage thriller. And so I think Matt Reeves is someone who very much could have done that just as well as he did the movies that he did. And with everything I just said, I think it would also provide great opportunities to create really tense, thrilling, and scary horror sequences with the apes. I think there's a lot of stuff visually you could do. There's a lot of stuff just thematically you could do. I mean, there are already sequences in the Planet of the Apes trilogy that are really tense for different reasons, but they're really tense. You could flip them, make them much more horror-centric. You can make them much scarier. You put much more emphasis on the terror that the apes could cause you if you care about the human characters, instead of the reverse, which is what we got, which is caring about the ape characters and watching their journey. And I think that would, again, provide a lot of really great horror opportunities. It would also provide a lot of opportunities for creepier ape designs. Some apes already look a bit scary until you get to know them in these movies, but this is something that could be pushed even further. That all being said, would I give up what we got to see this alternate horror version of the Caesar trilogy? Absolutely not. But it's fun to think about all the spooky possibilities. I think a horror version of the Planet of the Apes trilogy could have been really cool. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. As a horror fan, it's something that piques my interest a lot. I think looking at Matt Reeves as a filmmaker, it's something he probably could have done, although again, like I said, there's other filmmakers that could have easily stepped in and taken this idea, this concept, and made it just as scary as it has the potential to be. And had you taken maybe a character like Malcolm and Ellie and Alex from Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, maybe made them the main focus of the three movies, or maybe even someone just random that we've never met. I think had you made them a really compelling protagonist, you could put them in harm's way and use the apes to instill fear in them, instill fear in humanity. Could have made for something really interesting and a different version of Planet of the Apes that I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't have been into, but I personally think it's something that would have been exciting to see. That being said, it's not something that I would personally trade for what we did end up getting. It's fun to think about, especially as someone who loves horror, but I think what we ended up getting is perfectly fine the way it is. That being said, is a horror approach to Planet of the Apes something that we could get down the line? Is it a genre that is ripe for this franchise to dive into further? I want to know what you guys have to say down in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of my take on if the Caesar trilogy could have worked as a horror trilogy. Do you think that there's room in this franchise to take the concept of Planet of the Apes into more of a horror realm? Do you think it could work? If you're a horror fan, do you think it could work? If you're not a horror fan, do you not want to see it work? I want to hear all of your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you so much for checking out today's video here on Ape Nation. I hope you guys are having a fun Halloween, whatever you're doing to celebrate. And if you liked this video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all things apes. I'll catch you in the next one. So until then, goodbye.